on Constitutional Amendments, Revision of Codes, on proposed Senate Resolution 953. Before we proceed, I believe Senator Drilon is online, and therefore there is a quorum. We hereby call this committee hearing into order. The resolution that is being heard is Resolution 953, entitled Resolution Directing the Senate Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes to conduct a review in aid of legislation of the country's existing criminal laws, to consider the rise of social media platforms and the rapid advancement of technology. This is authored by this representation and Senator Minority Leader Frank Drilon. Before we proceed, if I may be allowed a opening statement. Good morning to my dear colleagues and to our resource persons. Before we begin, this representation would like to thank Minority Leader Senator Drilon for agreeing to co-author proposed Senate Resolution number 953, which seeks to direct this committee to study our existing criminal laws, considering the rise of social media platforms and the rapid advancement of technology. Based on the report, Digital 2021, the Philippines, by We Are Social and Hootsuite, the Philippines tops the entire world in average daily time spent using social media at around 4 hours and 15 minutes per day, and average daily time spent using the internet at around 10 hours, 56 minutes per day. Babad na babad ang mga Pilipino sa social media at sa internet. At dahil Pilipinas, according to We Are Social and Hootsuite, ang top-notcher, naisipan po namin ni Senator Drilon na i-file ang Senate Resolution 953 para mapag-aralan natin kung nakakahabol ba yung mga batas natin sa mabilis na pag-usbong ng social media at ng teknolohiya. Despite technological advancements, our law should always protect us and our loved ones, our children, from those who abuse the openness of the internet by spreading disinformation, hate speech, and undertake criminal activity using social media platforms. Survivors of these malicious attacks suffer lingering mental, psychological, and emotional challenges. And worst case scenario po dito ay maging parte na ng kultura ng mga kababayan natin ang pagsisinungaling, pagmumura, pambubuli, panloloko. Hindi po tayo papayag na maging new normal ito. We have invited resource persons from the academe, creative, and media agencies, social media platforms, business groups, private businesses, some fact-checking entities, and legal luminaries to shed light on how the disinformation industry works and what are the steps being taken by the social media platforms, ad agencies, and private businesses, as well as how legislation may address and curb the rise of disinformation and hate speech in the Philippine digital landscape. We shall also discuss how private businesses may be inadvertently funding channels or accounts that spread disinformation and hate speech. In the interest of full disclosure, last July 2021, this representation filed cybercrime cases against the owners and operators of certain YouTube channels over unfounded and baseless videos directed at my person, my wife Sharon, and my family. Alam ko na hindi lang ang aking pamilya ang naging biktima ng mga fake news, digital disinformation, at hate speech. At tulad ninyo, gagawin natin lahat para protektahan ang ating pamilya laban sa kanila. We are conducting this hearing to address the critical gaps in the law since digital or network disinformation is not simply a personal concern, but is a worldwide concern that requires governmental as well as stakeholder, corporate, civil society organization interventions. Magpapakita po kami ng ilang halimbawa dito sa YouTube na ipapakita natin. Ang unang bahagi ay nag-play ang ads ng Shopee at Lazada habang ang kabuuan ng video ay paninira sa ating Senate President Soto. Can we play the video, please?
Salamat, Shopee.
Iniisip mo ba lahat ng hinahanap mo? Free shipping vouchers!
Ito ang nakakagulat. Kumpirmadong nanggigil nga sa galit ang viral lawyer na si Attorney Larry Gadon nang magsalita ito sa inihaing resolusyon ni Senate President Tito Soto na ibalik ang di umano'y biased media na ABS-CBN sa Philippine Free TV. Sa naging pahayag ni Attorney Gadon sa kanyang social media accounts ay diretsa niyang sinupalpal at binatikos ang mga senador na pilit binubuhay ang epala ng ABS-CBN na mabigyan sila ng another 25 years franchise. Halos murahin sa inis ni Attorney Gadon sina Senate President Tito Soto, Risa Hontiveros, Nancy Binay, Congresswoman Vilma Santos at iba pang mga mambabatas na patuloy ang pagsuporta sa ABS-CBN. Muling binalaan ni Attorney Gadon at pinaalala.
Okay, so that is one. May ilang halimbawa pa kaming nakita. Ito yung mga screenshots na mula sa mga YouTube videos na umaatake naman sa ating pagkatao. Makikita sa mga screenshots na yung ads ng Cobra, Asia Brewery, East Bay Residences, yung Rockwell Land, Shopee, at Great Taste Coffee ay pinapalabas mga video na nagkakalat din ng hate speech at fake news. Dalawa ang napansin natin sa bawat frame. Yung ads ng mga wholesome na korporasyon at yung title ng video na quote-unquote, "Shut up Kiko, ang bobo mo." O Kiko, tinawag na bobo ng mga OFW. So, these are the slides. Is that the last one? Okay. Do these wholesome and well-respected brands want to be associated with hate speech? Iilan lang po ito sa mga balak talakay ng committee ito sa hearing na ito at sa mga susunod na hearing. Allow me as well to point out key points in the architects of network disinformation, written by a research paper written by Dr. Jason Cabañas as co-author and Dr. Jonathan Ong. Dr. Jonathan Ong is a professor at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, whose expertise is digital technology. And Dr. Jason Cabañas is a communications professor at the De La Salle University. Among the summary of the findings in the paper, the use of fake accounts and paid influencers on FB and Twitter for political operations is widespread. Politicians often employ campaign strategists from local quote-unquote boutique advertising and PR agencies as chief architects of network disinformation campaigns. 3, ad agency strategists and PR strategists heavily rely on the promotional labor of digital influencers who have around 50,000 to 2 million followers, and community-level fake account operators who manually operate fake profiles to infiltrate community groups and news pages, and very minimally on automated bots. Number 4, disinformation workers are financially, politically, socially, and psychologically driven in different ways, e.g., financial motivations, political motivations, etc. 5, operating fake accounts for politicians involve always on, flexible, and self-exploitative arrangements as other online freelance work. However, it is accomplished by the stressful emotional labor of justifying this work both to others and to themselves. Number 6, network disinformation campaigns operate with two opposing dynamics in play: controlled interactivity, using of a common script, cascaded, and two, volatile virality, depends on the creativity of the disinformation worker, taps into populist anger and resentment, may lead to misogyny, anti-intellectualism, and other forms of offensive speech. And number 7, everyone in the disinformation hierarchy seems to be engaged in various degrees of trolling. And so, with this, we would like to proceed with the hearing. Ginagawa po natin ito to protect the community, our children. It is our shared responsibility to set up sufficient safeguards and policies to curb online hate speech, disinformation, and address online criminal activity squarely. Ang hiling po namin ay sana bukas sa pakikipagtulungan ang ating mga stakeholders tulad ng mga social media platforms, advertising agencies, mga advertiser o mga corporations, private businesses para sa tuluyan nating masugpo ang problema natin sa disinformation. Maraming salamat at maaari na pong nating simulan ang hearing. May we know if Senator Drilon would like to deliver the opening statement?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you very much for taking the time of the committee in order to hear this very critical issue that we face today, not only today, but for the past several years. As the good chairman has clearly stated in his opening statement, the defamation which we all suffer from the social media, in the view of the chairman, must be brought about by two issues. To my recollection, number one, the fact that these trolls are encouraged because of the support given by the advertising that they have on their media, on their sites. And also, in my view, Mr. Chairman, the abuses done is because of the anonymity of the trolls. In other words, they just keep on hitting everybody, the Senate President, yourself, myself, and everybody else that they would want to hit. And they have the impunity because of the anonymity. Mr. Chairman, you know, I was a victim of libel on cyberspace. Fortunately, the one who constantly hit me used a social media platform where I can identify him, and that is through the YouTube. So I was able to identify him. I was able to avail of the libel laws of our country and had him finally convicted by the Supreme Court of the crime of libel, libelous and malicious statements made over social media, and he is now in Muntinlupa serving his prison term. This is a system which is available to the victims of defamation, where the libelous statements are made over traditional media. But when it is made through social media platforms where there is anonymity, the abuses are done. And this is what we should correct. In the course of our hearings this morning, Mr. Chairman, I would like to seek the views of our resource persons that of a proposed law which would require online social media platforms to reveal the identity of the trolls. In other words, this to me, this is the balance between the freedom of speech and the responsibility of the use of that freedom. In traditional media, we do not censor, but we make those responsible for defamatory language. We make them responsible under our revised penal code for libel, for defamation. In the development that we have because of technology, you cannot avail of this right because of the anonymity of the authors. You know, so I would request our resource persons, if they are prepared, to advise the committee, to give their expert views on the committee as the manner or the means by which we can require the social media platform to reveal the identity of the trolls. By doing this, then we can make the those who use the social media responsible, and those that they victimize can avail of the remedy under the law for libel and defamatory language. I am talking from experience, Mr. Chairman. When I was able, when Mr. Mejorada, I stated it's a public record. Mr. Mejorada kept on saying that I committed corruption in my projects in my hometown, home city, and he did it over YouTube. I I availed of the libel laws. I was able to have him convicted and affirmed by the Supreme Court, mind you. But as I repeat, this is not a remedy available where you have the trolls who hides anonymously, and you cannot bring them to court. So my suggestion to our resource persons is to guide the committee that through on a law which would compel the social media platforms to reveal the identity of the trolls, so that without stopping them from continuously defaming citizens, the citizen would have the right to recourse to his rights under our laws. That's our suggestion for purposes of this hearing, Mr. Chairman.
We thank
Thank
you, Senator Drilon, the Minority Leader, for his opening statement. We would like to acknowledge also the presence of our colleague, Senator Marcos. May we know if Senator Marcos would like to give an opening statement? Perhaps she stepped out. We may we may then proceed. She may avail of the opportunity to express or place on record a opening statement later if she so desires. We now proceed with the acknowledgement of our resource persons. I yield the floor to our committee secretary to proceed with acknowledging our resource persons. Go ahead, committee secretary.
Good morning, Your Honor. From the Association of Accredited Advertising Agencies Philippines, 4A's Philippines, Ms. Anna Norbert, Board Secretary. From the Makati Business Club, MBC, Ms. Geneva Francis Guyano, Senior Programs Officer. Mr. Coco Alcuas, Executive Director. Ms. Catch Ofilada, Policy Officer. From the Management Association of the Philippines, MAAP, Mr. Guy Moreno, Chair, Ease of Doing Business Committee. From the De La Salle University, Dr. Jason Vincent A. Cabañez, Professor of Communication. Ms. Roy Tan, Head of Politics and Government Outreach for APAC Meta, formerly Facebook. Mr. Roy Abrams, Law Enforcement Outreach Manager, APAC, Meta, formerly Facebook. Ms. Ellen Tordesillas from Verifiles. Ms. Lay Reyes, President, Internet and Mobile Marketing Association of the Philippines, EMAC. Rockwell Land Corporation was online a while ago but is now offline, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much to the committee secretary. May we request that the COMSEC try to get in touch with Rockwell Land representatives so that they may return. Baka nagkaroon ng Wi-Fi glitch. We can now proceed with the opening or the position papers of our resource persons. May we call on the Association of Accredited Advertising Agencies, Ms. Ann Norbert. Would you have a position paper on the resolution? You have the floor, Ms. Norbert.
Good morning, Your Honor. Unfortunately, we weren't able to prepare a position paper, so we will review it as a board moving forward. However, 4A's adheres to our code of ethics, which is to abide and protect consumers, and of course from any malicious content. So we support Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Norbert. And as soon as you have the position paper, we would appreciate receiving a copy for our guidance.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, thank you. We now proceed with the Makati Business Club. I understand the Makati Business Club, together with other business organizations, have come up with a statement. May we call on the Executive Director, Mr. Alcoas, Coco? Would you have your presentation of your position paper? Thank you.
Good morning, Senator. Good morning, Senator Drilon. We did have a statement that 16 or 17 groups released last Monday, December the 6th. I don't have a presentation on it. Would you like me to share some parts of it, Senator?
Yes, please, on behalf of the MBC. Go ahead, Coco.
I won't read the whole thing. We submitted it to the committee earlier today, and I'm sure they can circulate among the members. The title is Statement Against Disinformation and Hate Speech in Social Media and Other Platforms, and it begins by saying that together with other members of society, the business community has watched with concern how social media, and other platforms have been abused by multiple parties in recent years. They have been used to spread disinformation and hate speech, resulting in erroneous beliefs, confusion, and division. We are losing the trust and unity we need to work together to better our lives, our livelihoods, and society, especially amid the pandemic crisis. I think, Senator, this is really where we are all coming from. In any democracy, you need people, citizens, constituents, to be able to talk to each other, and the kind of both the bullying and the disinformation that we see on many platforms, and frankly, even face-to-face, Senator, has curtailed that. We go on to say that we watch with alarm how this abuse has spiked during the election season, and we fear that the damage may be long-lasting. The abuse comprises lies, personal attacks, trolling, misogyny, red tagging, and many more, sometimes putting people at risk of physical harm. We have several calls in the statement, Senator. We call on political players to consider what they're doing to the country and to individuals, and ask them to pledge not to engage in such abuse and exhort their supporters to remain civil as well. We call on operators of social media and other platforms to consider what they're allowing to happen and declare to their users and the public the steps that they're taking to curtail this. The next part is a call to the business sector itself, Senator. We realize the business sector plays a significant role here through advertising spending. While continuing to advocate media freedom, and this is important, Senator, that we continue to advocate media freedom, MBC and the other groups do that. We encourage businesses to evaluate the platforms that they advertise in, including social media, messaging apps, broadcast, and print, in terms of whether and how much disinformation and hate speech these platforms allow. We acknowledge that some of the platforms, and you saw some news on this last week, some of the platforms have taken steps to address these issues. We ask these platforms to more fully share with the public how they're addressing disinformation and hate speech, which may be a factor on where businesses and their products, where businesses feature rather their products and services reflecting the values of their organizations. When you spoke about wholesome organizations earlier, senators, that's what we're referring to here. We support ongoing efforts to create tools that businesses and advertisers can use and advertising companies can use to assist them in this evaluation in the near future, but commit to taking first steps now. And we close by calling on our countrymen and women to evaluate political players as well as these media and communications platforms on these same terms and use their votes and clicks to promote truth and civility in the coming election, Senator. That's the end of the statement, Senator. It's signed by 17 business organizations, and like I said, 18 rather, and we sent this to your committee earlier this morning, Senator.
Yes, thank you, Coco, for your position, manifestation of the position of the MAP. The MBC. May we now hear from Mr. Guy Moreno of the
Yes,
Management
thank you.
Association of the Philippines. Go ahead, Mr. Moreno.
Thank you, Chairman. I just have a correction to make. My name is Rui, R-U-Y, not Guy, G-U-Y.
I'm sorry about that.
And it is
Mr.
no,
Rui.
no, that's all right, Senator. Thank you. I was going to correct the Secretariat, but you beat me to it. I have a statement, Senator, which I timed. It will not take more than 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes, actually. And
Go ahead, please.
it is in complement to what Coco has already said. Good morning, Chairman Pangilinan, Senator Drilon. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting the Management Association of the Philippines to this hearing on Senate Resolution number 953. I am currently the chairman of MAP's Committee for the Ease of Doing Business and chairman of the Center for Global Best Practices, or CGBP. It is indeed laudable that the Senate to conduct a review in aid of legislation of existing criminal laws, that is what it says in the title of the resolution, to consider the rise of social media platforms and the rapid advancement of technology, for which the following comments are respectfully submitted. Electronics technology is developing practically at warp speed, with new issues and concerns arising with the introduction of new technology practically every 12 to 18 months. For example, Apple's newly introduced software 15.1 offers a feature called private relay that hides the IP address and browsing history of the user. One can imagine the difficulty of regulatory law enforcement and security authorities in tracing the criminal transactions or libelous transactions of persons that have such a feature in a commercially available device. The review in aid of legislation should not lead to another law if possible, but the strengthening of current laws, particularly the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012, the Access Devices Regulations Act of 1998, and I would also suggest the Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2001, since you're reviewing all the laws anyway. On the other hand, the committee could consider consolidating the key provisions of the three laws into one law to address current issues of concern, including a provision that the law should be subject to review at the end of every Congress, every 3 years, or at the maximum every 5 years. As earlier mentioned, such a review is necessary in view of the rapid development of technology, where IT equipment and software programs is considered obsolete after only 2 to 3 years. But equally as important, the law should strengthen the capability of the agencies that shall be implementing laws on cybercrimes, access device, and AMLA. We understand that law enforcement groups such as the PNP, NBI, and DOJ and AMLC are currently involved in cybercrime enforcement. We respectfully recommend the identification and inclusion in the law of the agency to serve as head to be fully supported in terms of training and state-of-the-art equipment. We recommend that the National Bureau of Investigation be the lead agency so that the NBI expand its qualifications for agents from lawyers and accountants to include persons with degrees in computer science and engineering, programming specialists, and thinking out of the box, reformed hackers or students who have the ability and interest in computer programs that could serve as OJT during summer breaks and could be identified as possible agents for recruitment. The NBI as lead agency can serve as a trainer for the other agencies involved in addressing cyber crimes, including case buildup, to ensure that cases filed will withstand legal scrutiny in court and result in violators being sentenced to prison. Such courses on cybercrime detection and solutions should be included in the curriculum and academe of the NBI Academy and also in the curriculum and academe of the Philippine Military Academy and Philippine National Police Academy. The NBI as lead agency must expand in terms of curriculum, technology, people, and equipment to be supported by the appropriate budget to fulfill its mandate, especially to invest in training and equipment. The NBI also has the skill to identify critical indicators of nefarious transactions, such as money laundering, child protection techniques, thus protecting Philippine society from current and future cybercrimes. A low-hanging fruit that we respectfully recommend for immediate legislative action would be the registration of SIM cards, of all SIM cards, particularly prepaid for mobile phones, must be required and enforced, with the seller being responsible to ensure the proper registration of buyers of prepaid SIM cards to be submitted to the telecom provider. All buyers of SIM cards must be required to show a government-issued ID. Such a law should require the telecom company to help its authorities trace violators by accessing telecom records and usage of the user suspect to locate the user suspect. We believe that the simple requirement of the registration of SIM cards will greatly enhance the country's efforts in fighting terrorism, particularly terrorist activities and terrorist financing, child exploitation and child trafficking, and money laundering. In summary, this hearing is timely as the world recovers from the COVID pandemic and the economy opens up. The protection of the general public, streamlining services is the priority for any strengthening of current cybercrime laws or introduction of a new consolidated cybercrime law. This protection will build trust and make it easier to do business in a post-COVID world while making the Philippines more competitive. Thank you for your attention, and if the committee desires, I shall officially submit this manifestation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Moreno. And yes, may we request that the manifestation written be submitted to this committee for our guidance and for the record. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Moreno. We now proceed with the next resource person, the co-author of the article or the research paper, Architects of Disinformation, Dr. Jason Vincent Cabañez, Professor of Communication of the De La Salle University. Go ahead, Dr. Cabañez. Thank you for joining us. And what is the title of the research paper and when was it conducted? Just before you make your presentation, just so that we are all on the same page.
Yeah, it's called The Architects of Network Disinformation. It was published in 2018, and the research happened sometime between 2016 to 2018.
So it's a 2018 paper
Yes.
on entitled "The Architects of Network Disinformation." Yes, thank you. Go ahead, Professor Cabañez. You have the floor for your position paper.
Thank you very much, Senator Pangilinan, and to Senator Drilon as well. I haven't really written up this paper, but I can do so. I have 4 points that I wanted to deliver, something that my research team and I have articulated in several papers and several fora as well, and I just want to kind of gather them together fairly quickly for today.
Yes, please
For
proceed.
Yes. Four key suggestions to think about perhaps in crafting this legislation. First has to do with campaign finance regulation. Senator Drilon was saying earlier the need to at least take away some of the anonymity that happens online. And we have written up in our papers that campaign finance regulation would be one way to do this, to bring in transparency and accountability so that people who are hiring digital campaigners are compelled to disclose what campaigns they've commissioned and how much and who are the people involved in this. And we suggest this because we are hoping that this could be an alternative to kind of any kind of censorship or regulation of free speech. So rather than regulate that, regulate the process behind the creation of these digital campaigns. But the sticking point there perhaps is how we will define a campaign in our contemporary period. Because I think a lot of our laws still think of campaigns as the traditional TV advertisement, but a lot of the campaigns now have a very different appearance, and I think that needs to be factored in such a policy of campaign finance regulation. The second point is to provide some kind of support to our digital workers, particularly the digital freelancers, so that they are not tempted to go into the digital underground. In our research, we had conversations with some of these freelancers, and although they earn sometimes an adequate salary, they want more, and that's why they get tempted into doing this kind of work, which pays quite well. So if we could provide some social safety nets, perhaps, especially because digital work is one of our sunshine industries. We want to keep that going and use the talent of our young people for positive means and not for digital disinformation. The third of the 4 points I wanted to raise is perhaps also create an environment that would strengthen self-regulation and ethical conduct amongst digital influencers. There's from our knowledge, there's currently none of this. It's really a digital wild west when it comes to influencing online. So some kind of mechanism that will institute self-regulation and an understanding of what is ethical conduct online for these digital influencers would be very, very helpful. And finally, a cross-sectoral kind of collaboration or consultation when platforms create their, I'm not sure if they do this already, but perhaps if they are a strengthening of this, when they are creating bespoke country level policies. Just to give an example, I think a lot of us in academia were surprised when YouTube announced that they weren't allowing advertising, political advertising, because we thought that it might be problematic because it'll just drive the digital campaigns even further underground rather than open up an opportunity for transparency so that we know who's paying for which ads. Because now official ads are not allowed, what's going to happen is the more covert kinds of ads, which will be even harder to trace. So I think those kinds of things could be thought through more thoroughly with a cross-sectoral collaboration. So if it is needed, I can submit a paper that elaborates on these 4 points. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Professor Cabañez, and allow me likewise to thank you for the paper that you put together. We have freely quoted from your paper, and we went through it before we had conducted these hearings, and it has revealed a lot in terms of our better understanding of this information. Dati kasi troll-focused yung concern sa disinformation. No? But in fact, the trolls are just a tip of an entire iceberg of a network of precisely infrastructure, disinformation infrastructure that is, enabling the current spread of such disinformation. We now proceed, and if you may, as you had earlier manifested, we would appreciate if you could submit also a written manifestation of your presentation. Thank you. We now proceed with, is Rockwell Land Corporation back? Hindi pa. O sige. We will invite them again to the next meeting, and we are serious about this, and we'd really like to hear all sectors involved in this digital media advertising, so that we get a better sense of what's going on and how we can intervene in terms of regulation, among others. We now proceed with Meta. Of course, that's Facebook. May we call on Mr. Roy Tan or Roy Abrams for their position paper. We thank you for joining us, and you have the floor now. Who will speak on behalf of Meta?
I believe Roy is going to start, but Roy, you appear to be on mute.
Yes, you are on mute, Roy.
Me? Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having us here today. I think we appreciate having been invited here to support the Senate's efforts to look closely at these issues arising from the use of social media and new forms of technology. So we don't have a position paper today. We want to be here to talk a bit more, and we're happy to present the paper after this hearing. But you just want to call out that our programs, products, and policies respond to the values of our company, and that is ensuring that we protect voice and keep our communities safe. And recently, we have released the Human Rights Impact Assessment Report in the Philippines. I'll be happy to share a link with you after the hearing. But it's basically our due diligence in line with Meta's commitment to incorporate human rights policy. And the report surfaces the positive impact and risks in the use of our platforms in the Philippines. We have made, the report has made 40 recommendations, and we are committing to implementing 24 recommendations, partly implementing 7 recommendations, and are assessing the feasibility of another 9. So there's some highlights from the report that I would like to just mention here. We have efforts at combating misinformation at Meta, in increasing transparency and preventing the influence operations, as well as promoting civic engagements, especially with the elections upcoming. We are specific to disinformation. We are constantly working to find and stop coordinated campaigns that seek to manipulate public debate across our suite of apps. And since 2017, we have our security teams, which number over 30,000 or 40,000 people at Meta working on safety and security, and have identified and removed over 150 covert influence operations, including several in the Philippines. And we have made announcements on a lot of these for violating our policy against coordinated inauthentic behavior. And when we identify CIB on Facebook or Instagram, we take action and disclose it publicly in our monthly report. And we continue to look at these investigations in the lead up to elections next year. And we also want to strengthen our toolkit against harmful types of networks. We have announced enforcement on coordinated social harm campaigns, which typically involve networks of primarily authentic users who organize to systematically violate our policies to cause harm on or off our platform. We have also updated our bullying and harassment policies, which includes politicians, to help protect people from certain brigading and mass harassment. This means we have additional tools to take down content, to fight influence operations, which, as we have seen, may also make use of authentic profiles on our platform. And lastly, this is just some of the many interventions that we have documented in the Human Rights Impact Assessment Report, and also in our transparency reports and community standards. So just like to end here, happy to give you the links to our reports if you haven't already had a look at them. And this was announced just last week. Thank you.
Thanks, Roy. And ladies and gentlemen, if you'll indulge me with a few additional points. My name,
Before
please.
you, yes,
Sure, please go ahead, sir.
yes, the procedure would be that you seek the recognition of the chair so that we have a orderly proceeding before you speak. And please do not address other resource persons directly. Please direct your attention to the chair, and if you, we can acknowledge whoever it is that you wish to perhaps relay certain messages to, so that there is proper parliamentary processes observed. So, Mr. Abrams, the chair recognizes you. You now have the floor. You may proceed. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's an honor to be here. Of course, we're talking about issues on a local level, on a societal level, on a national level, on a global level. These are incredibly challenging issues, but as I hope our record shows, Meta always shows up. We are always here to be part of these conversations, to listen, to take on board information from subject matter experts, from legislators like you, sir. We have consultations all the time with various members, various agencies within the government of the Philippines. I am what's called the law enforcement outreach manager. So it's my job to interact, to learn from, and to react to data requests from agencies in the Philippines, such as the National Police, the National Bureau of Investigation, the National Security Agency, and several others. And the reason I bring this up is because, Mr. Chair, one of our colleagues today brought up the idea of anonymity online. And anonymity is something that is more of a perception of the bad guy than true reality. What I mean by that is that Philippine law enforcement does have the power to get information from us, user data information from us in criminal matters that meet certain criteria, acknowledging fully that defamation can be one of our trickier issues. Most of the issues with which we have a more robust response are issues like child safety, human trafficking, and terrorism. It's fair to say that I interact with the Philippines government each and every day, and we have procedures in place for law enforcement to lawfully and appropriately get information to save children, to prevent hate speech, to prevent terror attacks. Just recently, we were involved in the prevention of a bombing down in Mindanao during Hari Raya. So we're quite proud of the work we do on the criminal side of matters. I say that, Mr. Chair, while acknowledging that there certainly are challenges when it comes to free speech and then the sort of differentiation between hate speech and criticism. But I do want to point out that it's probably pretty rare for tech companies to go on the record in various legislatures advocating for police to have more authority over getting user data. And I'm proud to say that Meta has done just that. So Roy and I and some of our colleagues who are not joining us today have spent something like 15 different hearings between the Senate and the House advocating for police to be able to get warrantless disclosure of user data in matters involving child safety. And I think we're all very optimistic that will pass. So public safety is something we take very, very seriously. And while not particularly relevant to the overall conversation today, I think it's important, Mr. Chair, for you and your colleagues to be aware of the fact that we do have ongoing productive relationships with the Department of Justice, PNP, NBI, and others. In fact, I spoke last week with the director of the NBI. Our relationship on the law enforcement side is quite healthy. And we do take, as Roy said, hate speech, bullying, doxing very, very seriously. To give you an example from an ASEAN neighbor, we recently had a case where a judge's children were outed in terms of where they go to school and where their after-school activities were. And once that was reported, it was removed from our platform literally within minutes. And that's because we have people like me who show up and who talk and build relationships with agencies that are charged with protecting our Filipino community of users. So thank you for your time, Mr. Chair, and I yield back the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Abrams, for your participation. There may be some questions raised to be raised later. Maybe Where are you now at the moment? Are you in ASEAN? Are you in Southeast
Yes,
Asia?
I'm based in Singapore, but pre-COVID, I was in Manila once or twice a month. So I'm very much looking forward to getting back and eating some Filipino food and doing some diving, and hopefully
So-
meeting some of you fine people in person.
That would be great.
Yes.
Because we feel this is a strategic partnership that we have to undertake in terms
Absolutely.
of addressing disinformation and criminal activity.
Absolutely.
media
And
platforms.
just in terms of the election, we have ongoing meetings with the Election Commission and with the National Security Agency. We want to do everything we possibly can to keep our platforms as secure as possible from foreign interference when it comes to Filipinos deciding their own political fate.
Yes, that too is a concern, and we will probably have another hearing for that. The disinformation coming from various countries, or at least based in other countries. Your own. Are you from the United States? Are you American?
Yes, I am American. I've lived in Asia since 2014. So have a bit of an Asian heart.
Yes. You are familiar with the Mueller report
Yes.
and Russian intervention on social media.
And I can tell you,
That's something that we are concerned about also in the Philippines.
and it's a very righteous concern, and we've taken on board hundreds of lessons learned from the election in 2016, both in terms of hiring more subject matter experts, being more proactive, more meaningful and deep engagement with government agencies and legislatures. Our election sort of infrastructure has grown considerably, as our strategy.
Yes. Thank you. We will come to the questions later.
Thank you, sir.
And again, thank you for joining us, Mr. Abrams, Mr. Tan. Mr. Tan, are you from Singapore? Are you Singaporean?
That's correct. I am Singaporean.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you. Just for the information of our colleagues, Google Philippines first confirmed that they would be sending 2 representatives, but after which they later in the day yesterday they expressed their regrets. But I understand they are committed to appearing in the next hearing. We do not wish to have to subpoena anyone to attend these hearings, and we thank Facebook or Meta for their presence today. We now proceed with Verifiles, the fact-checking entity, and Miss Ellen Tordesillas is here. Do you have your position paper, ma'am? Would you like to present it? You have the floor.
Yeah, magandang umaga po sa lahat. I have some notes, pero may merong mga konting suggestions, pero anin ko na lang.
Yes, go ahead, ma'am. Go
Sasabihin
ahead.
ko
You
na
have
lang.
5 minutes.
Yeah. I'm Ellen Tordesillas. I'm president of Verifiles. Verifiles is a non-stock, non-profit organization registered with the Philippine Securities and Exchange Commission. We formed Verifiles in 2008 with the purpose of contributing our bit in promoting excellent journalism through stories that adhere strictly to the core values of journalism and by training journalists and students to do good journalism. We give special attention to underreported topics like stories about persons with disabilities, protection of environment, and human trafficking and others. These days, we're doing a lot of fact-checking. Ano ba yung fact-checking? Fact-checking is the act of determining whether statements in a non-fictional manner are true or not. The term fact-check may be new to many, but the act of verifying facts before publishing is a traditional practice of media organizations, both print and broadcast. But the coming of social media, Facebook, now known as Meta, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, where anybody can be a reporter and publisher and can post what he or she wants to post without going through The usual verification process employed in traditional media has led to the alarming phenomenon of mis- and disinformation. Yun ang sinasabi ng iba na fake news. Na sana wag natin gamitin ang salitang fake news kasi mali yun eh. Oxymoron yon. Yun yung dalawang salita na magkasalungat. Kasi ang attribute ng news ay dapat totoo. Kapag fake, hindi news yun. So, ang ginagamit namin sa media industry ay misinformation at disinformation. Ang misinformation ay mga maling balita na kinakalat na hindi naman sadyang manloko. Hindi nga alam siguro ng mga nag-post o nag-share na mali pala yung kanilang kinakalat na impormasyon. Ang disinformation naman ay ginagawa talaga para manloko. Iba-iba ang purpose. Iba para kumita ng pera, ang iba naman para isulong yung political agenda. Alam natin ang kahalagahan ng katotohanan at ang masamang epekto ng kasinungalingan. Ang disinformation ay pagsisinungaling at panloloko. Ang nakakalungkot lang dito ay marami talagang nabibiktima ng disinformation. Merong study noong 2018 ang mga researchers ng Massachusetts Institute of Technology na ang maling information sa Twitter ay 6 na beses na mas mabilis kumalat kaysa katotohanan. Marami sa atin naniniwala tayo kaagad kapag isang impormasyon ay gusto natin na aayon sa ating paniniwala. Yun ang sinasabi nilang information bias. Kung mas interesting o exciting ang impormasyon, hindi natin inaalam kung totoo o hindi. Ang isang nakakabahala na pattern na aming nakikita sa aming pagsuyod ng online disinformation, by the way, isa pala kami sa third-party fact-checker ng Facebook dito sa Pilipinas. Ang marami sa online disinformation ay nanggagaling sa mga opisyal ng pamahalaan. Nakakagalit ito kasi pera ng taong bayan ang gamit para lukuhin ng taong bayan. Para naman tayong ginigisa sa sarili nating mantika, di ba? At kung ang hawak ng mga opisyal na ito, maling impormasyon ang basihan ng mga policies na kanilang ginagawa, magkawindang-windang ang bayan natin. Kawawa naman ang sambayan ng Pilipino. Ang isang example dito ay ang red tagging na ginagawa ng National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, itong NPF-LCAC. Kaya, sa talakayan nitong SRN 953, dapat siguro pagtuunan ng pansin ang papel ng mga opisyal ng pamahalaan na nagkakalat ng kasinungalingan. We believe in the good intentions of the proponents of SRN 953, but we are a bit worried. We are one of the oppositors of the Anti-Terror Act, which we believe is unconstitutional and undermines many of our freedoms, including press freedom. Our appeal is to find a balance between protecting the public from the excesses of social media and making sure that our basic freedoms, including freedom of speech, of expression, or of the press, are not undermined. Please make sure that the cure that you will be coming up would not be worse than the disease. Maraming salamat po. Yun lang.
Thank you, Ellen from Verifiles. We now proceed to the last resource person. Before we go ahead, we have the questions from the committee members. The Internet and Mobile Marketing Association of the Philippines, IMMAP. Just for the record, it is an association with more than 250 members that include brands, agencies, advertisers, tech companies, media, and startups. And we have the president, Ms. Lei Reyes. Go ahead, ma'am. You have the floor. Good morning, ma'am.
Hi, good morning, everyone. We don't have a prepared position paper yet for you, but we will work on one and we will submit it just like the 4As will. I come from an advertising background, and our organization, IMAP, has been focused on primarily a lot of education, upskilling, and events that promote learning more about how to do digital marketing. I think that's because primarily we support business transformation. That is part and parcel of, we hope, our economic comeback. And digital marketing in a vibrant environment plays a huge role in that. We fully support a trustworthy environment where consumers, human beings, and brands can enjoy, engage, and transact in a way that is comfortable for everyone in the ecosystem. So I think we're here also to participate and listen. But in terms of what we're around and what we're here to do, simply because we're here to educate our members and help them keep up to date with the latest, with what is happening in the digital marketing ecosystem, we would be more than happy to support a trustworthy environment for brands, marketers, and ad agencies.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes, for your. If you could submit a position paper, it would be
Yes.
highly appreciated. And thank you
Thank
for your
you.
presentation. Just for the record, also before we proceed with the questions, we have received information from the Media Specialists Association of the Philippines. We invited them because media agencies are the entities that present, get approval, and implement media plans. And they're the ones who work with various media suppliers, including digital platforms, regarding ad placements. So the Media Specialists Association of the Philippines, we believe, is the relevant association governing media agencies. And therefore, their refusal to attend, they respectfully decline our invitation and quote unquote, because they are not experts on policies and linkage to social online criminal acts. We respectfully disagree. We will invite them again to the next hearing, and we hope they will accede to our invitation. Otherwise, we will have to subpoena them, which we would rather not do. So our appeal to the Media Specialists Association of the Philippines is to participate in these hearings and be present in the next one. We will again send the invitations through the committee secretary. Thank you. With that, we now open the floor for the questions from our colleagues. Yes, the minority leader is recognized. Go ahead, Senator Drilon.
Yes, I would like to address Professor Cabañas. My questions to Professor Cabañas and Mr. Abrams and Mr. Tan of Facebook. The basic issue that I have here is precisely the issue of accountability versus press freedom. I think that's at the core of the discussion. And as Mr. Desillas said exactly, there must be a balance between free speech and accountability. Uh, I think it is clear that insofar as traditional media is concerned, there is no question that free speech is protected, but at the same time, those who maliciously abuse the freedom of speech is appropriately punished. So that is the line that is drawn. However, in social media, it is difficult to draw that line because of the anonymity of the author. There is no publisher. The author can hide behind fake sites, and therefore, um, I started this hearing by an opening statement. How do we make this accountability? How do we find a balance between accountability and free speech? We don't have to look far. Right now, we have a balance insofar as traditional media is concerned, but not through the cyberspace now. And therefore, I would like to get from our resource persons how will be able to do it. In other jurisdictions, the social media platforms can be required to reveal the identity of the author, then we do not regulate free speech. What we regulate would be the accountability, as we regulate the accountability in traditional media. And we were thinking that there should be a process by which we can require the social media platforms, online social media platforms, to take down those which are clearly defamatory. And should they fail to take down the account, then we impose a fine for that unjustified refusal to take down an account which clearly is being utilized to defame other people. May I get your comments on that specific proposal, Mr. Chairman? Maybe we can start with
Sir Cabañas.
Dr. Cabañas. Yes, please.
You have the floor, Dr. Cabañas.
Thank you very much, Senator Pangilinan, and I'll address Senator Drilon's question. I was saying earlier that one of the avenues that this can be done, specifically when it comes to digital disinformation campaigns, to create another layer of accountability is through campaign finance regulation, because that would be really helpful in forcing the hand of people who use the services of digital campaigners to declare, the nature of the campaign, how much is being spent, and who are involved in it. But I was also saying earlier that one of the key challenges here, and where I think our laws lag behind as well, is how do you define what a campaign is? For example, for our electoral code, I'm not a lawyer, but from what I know, the ones about media are very much about print and broadcast, and not necessarily digital. So perhaps there's a kind of cooperation can be done with people who are actually experts in campaigns to define what digital media campaigns are like.
Just to interrupt you, Doctor, campaign finances laws have been there for decades. I can tell you, as one who is in the field, you can never impose campaign finances, limitations, or information. This law is more honored in breach than in compliance. I can assure you that. Do you think that's the very nature of unfortunately, in our environment, truth in campaign financing compliance is more honored in breach than in compliance. All those findings in the Common Act. And, whether you like it or not, I know it is not correct. I know it lacks the morality and standard of ethical practice that should be there. But that is the reality we face. That is why I was suggesting that maybe we can look at legislation which, as a balance between free speech and accountability, will require media platforms to identify who the author is. The technology exists. When you talk about human trafficking, when you talk about child pornography, all of these accounts are fake accounts. Nobody says that I will use social media platform to promote child trafficking or child prostitution. No one. So these are all fake accounts. Why are they able to trace it? How can the law enforcement can trace it? And therefore the technology exists. Why can we not compel that technology to be applied in cases of the lies and the malicious allegations done on social media, not to stop them. It is not to regulate free speech. Free speech will be unhampered as it is unhampered today in social media. But we regulate we can impose responsibility by compelling the media platforms to reveal who are these people. Today, in traditional media, you cannot hide under anonymity, right? You are not compelled to the media practitioners are not compelled to reveal their source, right? But that they are the author is something that is given, and therefore there is accountability, and that accountability is enforced through our libel laws. What I am saying is, why can we not enforce this accountability by compelling the social media platforms to reveal the identity? And if they refuse to reveal, to take it down because it's libelous. And if they refuse to take it down, they should be subject to fine. May I have your comments on that, Doctor? Dr. Cabañez.
To address that. I agree that the campaign financing is just one other layer. We were actually in our conversations about it, we said that we acknowledge that people will find ways to get around it, but it's just another layer of making it more difficult to conduct these kinds of campaigns. But yes, I agree that another way that this can be done is to to open up this transparency and accountability to the users of social media. And my only thing there is that that's okay as long as there are also very strong and strict standards that are put in place that would say when social media platforms should be compelled to do these things. And I understand there's already a template anyway with other kinds of issues. So perhaps we can draw on that. But a strong set of regulations or policies as well about when this should be done should be in place, just to safeguard also the privacy of the users, when so that it's not unnecessarily undermined. That it's only that the request to open up transparency and accountability happens only in specific circumstances when it's really needed. And then perhaps I think that could be justified. Thank you.
Yes, we are not regulating free speech, Mr. Chairman. Let me emphasize that we are not regulating free speech. What we are regulating is the process that is being employed precisely to defame people. And they can continue to defame people, but they must be held accountable for it. And I think that is the balance that we are looking for. May I now hear the views of our resource persons, Mr. Abrams and Mr. Tan, on this specific issue?
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. So I'd just like to first really talk about our advertising policies and our advertising tools. Like what Dr. Jason mentioned just now about transparency in advertising, I would just like to call attention to what we have in the Philippines that we have rolled out in the Philippines in the past year already, and that is our ad transparency tools. And basically, it's an industry-leading set of tools which require, if you want to place any ads on political or electoral ads that relate to politics, elections, require you to make sure that you're authenticated, you're a real person, and that you're based in the Philippines. So in order to place such ads, you have to prove with ID, and we will check that you are based in the Philippines. This helps to prevent issues of foreign interference. And at the same time, when you place an ad, the requirement is that you have to include a disclaimer. And that disclaimer has to be very clear in who is paying for the ad and the contact details of the advertiser. So the name of the advertiser, the phone number, email address, website, even the address of the advertiser. And all this information will actually go into our ads library. So you can actually go to the URL facebook.com/ads/library. And if you look under the Philippines, all these ads which are required to have disclaimers and to be authorized, they're all put in the archive for 7 years. So basically, right now, a lot of people are starting to campaign for the elections. If you go to the ad library now, you'll be able to see all these advertisements. You're able to see who are paying for it. On top of that, we also give a basic range of the cost of that particular ad and the region and the demographics which have seen the ad as well. So we want to be very transparent about who's paying for the ad, how much they're spending, and who they're targeting. So it's a very transparent, industry-leading advertising tool that we have, and this is how we want to be transparent about the ads on our platform. On top of that, we also have our authenticity policies, which are intended to create, a safe environment where people can trust each other on our platform and hold each other accountable. And we have built, a combination of both AI, automated, and manual systems to block as well as remove such accounts, which are used to persistently abuse our community standards. So we have a set of community standards, right? And the penalties when we find these accounts who are abusing our community standards could include disablements, could include limited use of a platform, but they're basically designed to be proportionate to the severity of the violations and the risk of harm. Continued violations of our community standards will have repeated warnings, and eventually the account will be disabled. So just want to kind of call out our community standards do cover a lot of policies regarding hate speech, bullying, harassment, and we have taken down a lot of accounts in the Philippines and content in the Philippines, for things like inciting violence, inciting hate against different figures. And we do want to make sure that, all accounts, where possible, are as authentic as possible. So they have to use their own photos, they have to use their own real names, and anybody can report potentially fake accounts, and we do review them. And we do actually either take down the account or pause the account and require them to confirm the identity before they can continue using the account. So these are some of the aspects that we have in our advertising tools, as well as our authenticity policies. And I want to pass it over to Rob to really go in a bit more detail of some of the additional things regarding data usage or data requirements. Rob, over to you.
Thank you, and Mr. Chair, if it's all right, I'll continue after.
Go ahead. You have the
with your
floor.
permission, sir. Thank you. So a couple of things I'd like to sort of emphasize. We talked a little bit earlier about content takedowns, so something that perhaps does not rise to the level of a criminal investigation, but nonetheless violates our community standards and needs to be taken down. And while it is absolutely true that any user can report any violation, through a whole lot of hard work and interaction with the anti-cybercrime group of the PNP, we have developed a direct reporting system wherein they are given a special email address just for them, and they can report content for takedown directly. And because it's coming from a government, a trusted government agency, those are treated with priority. So that's on sort of the takedown side of things. When we rise to the level of a criminal investigation, we do have a very robust data disclosure program where law enforcement agencies in the Philippines and elsewhere are entitled to information that we deem basic subscriber information, or BSI. That includes IP information. Why is that important? Well, one of our colleagues just mentioned the fact that fake accounts are used to groom children and to spread child pornography. 100% true. I do not disagree with a word of that. However, in just about every case, they are still using the same machine. They're still using the same computer. So those IP addresses, The log on, log off IP addresses, the session IDs are often still perfectly relevant. Now, where it gets challenging in the Philippines is under the laws of the Philippines, police need a search warrant in order to get this information. Many of your ASEAN neighbors, North American countries, many European countries have a much lower threshold, an extrajudicial threshold to get this information. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we are in very, very close consultations with the relevant subcommittees within both the House and the Senate to revise this to make police a whole lot more nimble. As you know, internet cafes are still quite common throughout the Philippines. So in order for the police to make use of this data, they'll need quicker access to it. But I do want to emphasize that police have a direct channel to us for content takedowns. They use it each and every day. And they have a direct access channel to submit their legal process, which hopefully, now that we're back in session, will be a warrantless process that will make police far more better equipped to respond more nimbly to these types of crimes.
Mr. Abrams.
Yes.
Mr. Abrams. Suppose a troll would defame Senator Pangilinan or myself. We know it is, it's obviously a troll because the identities cannot be ascertained. What can Facebook do? Would the matter of taking it down would depend on you guys, and the matter of imposing accountability is so difficult because you are under no obligation to reveal who these people are.
It's
Remember,
true.
I am talking about defamation, which we experience on an hourly basis.
Sure.
When we talk about crimes, yes, that is more obvious because these are public interest, but cases. But to me, at least, I'm not speaking for the chairman, but on an hourly basis, we are victims of trolls, and we are helpless because we do not know who they are.
Right.
We would suspect that hundreds of them are employed in government using public funds to defame a political opposition. If they were in traditional media, we can go to court and enforce the laws. But when they avail of the social platform, the reality is it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to exact responsibility and accountability. So that is why the proposition is to have a process wherein accountability can be enforced by compelling the platforms to reveal the identity, and if not, then the state would have the right to impose a fine for refusal to agree to this transparency, to comply with the transparency rules.
Right. So that's an important question. Let me also apologize for why my video is not working. I'm confused as to why, but hopefully you can hear me loud and clear.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Terrific. Thank you, sir. So there's a few things to unpack there. When trolling borders on hate speech or becomes hate speech, when there's threatening behavior, when there's doxing, that's rising to a level where there can absolutely be data disclosure. Those are crimes. Those are crimes where there's threats of violence. Those are crimes where you or your families could be in danger. Where it gets a lot trickier are, and we use this term worldwide, is trolling. And, far be it for me to tell you how tough your job is. I'm not an elected official, but I know that you folks are submitted to lots of criticism, oftentimes unfair, oftentimes inaccurate. So we do offer you the opportunity to counter message, and we can do that by verifying your page with one of those blue check marks. And that's something Roy's team handles very well, and he can speak more to that. And Roy can also speak a little bit more on the community standards that are involved in trolling that don't meet the criminal threshold. I can also assure you, and I don't know if this is good news or not, But this issue is not unique to the Republic of the Philippines. As someone who works here in APAC and covers other nations, it's quite an issue, in the Pacific, and a lot of it comes from the diaspora. So it's folks who are not living in the country but are causing trouble by sending messages from abroad where they feel as though they're out of reach by their home country's law enforcement. So these are challenges that won't be solved overnight. I think they'll be solved by continuing to have open dialogues like these. As Roy can explain far better than I did, or I can, our community standards are not set in stone, in that they are an iterative process. So they are revised quite regularly to adapt to a current threat picture and current trends. But that's about the level of my expertise there. So I'd like to hand it back over to Roy, Mr. Chair, if that's all right.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, Mr. Abrams. All that we're saying here is that we should, right now, the enforceability of our laws on libel is dependent on social media platforms like Facebook. Whether or not they will take down a particular publication on social media is a matter addressed to its judgment. What we're saying, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, is that if we require transparency, we should be able to compel accountability, and we are just transferring the enforceability of our libel laws from Facebook or other social media platforms to our courts. That's all that we're saying. We're not changing any rule. We're just saying that our laws cannot be our laws on defamation and libel cannot be enforced given the realities in the social media platforms. All that we're saying is that our legislation should enable private citizens or public figures who are defamed from transferring the enforceability of a violation of our rights from the social media platform owners to our courts so that we can enforce accountability. That is our respectful submission, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Minority Leader. Just a point of information regarding the ability of social media participants or those with social media accounts to report violations of community standards to the social media platforms. That is well and good that you have that mechanism. However, the question is, does the mechanism work? Because this representation, for example, and this is not for Facebook, but another social media platform, I reported the accounts 80 times, and either my report was denied, and the social media platform claimed that it was not in violation of their community standards, or my report was ignored, and that's 80 times. So you can imagine a defamation of an ordinary citizen. They'll probably have no recourse at all. So yes, there are these mechanisms in place, but are they effective? And are the social media platforms doing enough? After 80 times, I said I'm going to file the case, and now we have a case. But how many of our citizens can afford filing cases? They'll just have to suffer, and so that's one of the questions. Accountability is important, yes, and mechanisms to enforce accountability, is good on paper, but in reality, do these mechanisms effectively address accountability? It's there, but is it effective? I appreciate the points raised by Mr. Tan on what you have done, taken down a number, many accounts, etc., and rightly so. But how I wish we wouldn't be having this hearing today if all those that has been done has been effective in precisely addressing disinformation. But that's precisely why we have this hearing today, because it looks like not enough is being done, and we're trying to figure out how to make the necessary interventions, whether it's legislation or self-regulation or stakeholders coming together. I read in one material the title of the book, The Hype Machine. Perhaps some of you are familiar with it. It's written by a digital technology professor from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And he has said precisely that it is a combination of legislation, stakeholder participation, social media platforms interventions, vigilance that will address the challenge and the problem of disinformation. So it's not legislation per se. That is just one aspect of the entire effort. We need the social media giants' interventions. We need the business sector's participation, and of course, fact checkers, civil society organizations. And this too is the theory put forward, or the solutions put forward by Dr. Cabañas and Dr. Ong in their paper. It has to be a multi-sectoral approach to address disinformation. But we go back again to that question of, should these accounts have identities or real persons? Should the policy of keeping them anonymous? There is freedom of information, definitely, that's protected by the Constitution of the Republic. But clearly, there is no freedom of disinformation. And that's where we're coming from. And how do we address that? Are there other questions from Senator Drilon?
None, Mr. Chairman. But
Okay.
I would like to hear the views of our resource persons,
Yes.
particularly Mr. Tan and Abrams, on what I had proposed, basically. A
Yep.
very specific proposal.
Mr. Chair, happy to speak a bit more.
Go ahead, Roy, Mr. Tan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think we agree that it's a multi-faceted approach, and we at Facebook have a multifaceted approach as well to counter, disinformation or misinformation as well. I think, just want to highlight that our committee standards, if you actually have had a look at it, it is actually very detailed in what can and cannot be done. Right, so we actually go down to the nitty gritty of even giving potential examples of, you can say this and you can't say that, because we know that if it's too, if it's too high level, all right, and it's a lot of interpretation. So we do try to drill it down to as much detail as possible.
Mr. Tan, we have what we're just asking you, a very specific proposal. Can we have a process by which the identity of the authors can be made public?
So I'm coming to that. I mean, I have to talk about
Yes,
a
please.
multifaceted approach, because it's not just one thing to counter, misinformation, right? So that's one thing that we have. It's a very detailed
Yeah, because the misinformation, yes, you're saying you have remedies, but obviously, as the chairman said, it is not working today because we get a lot of misinformation. We get a lot of defamation on social media.
In terms of defamation, we actually have a reporting form that I don't think maybe is as known to most stakeholders, but you can actually submit your reports in the reporting form. And what happens is that we have a global process in place to review the report.
Yes, excuse me, Mr. Tan. Let me interrupt again. Precisely what we're saying is this power to enforce accountability should be lodged in our courts because this defines the rights and obligations of citizens under the present system. that authority is lodged in private hands, simply because we cannot avail of this remedy as these accounts are anonymous.
Yeah, so precisely. So by making a report, we can go through the report and basically, with more information and the context that you're able to give in the report, then
Yes.
essentially we are able to give you the information.
Excuse me, I can appreciate where you're going. What I'm simply saying is, without changing that, we just want the citizens to have the ability to move that responsibility and accountability from Facebook to the courts. But we cannot do that unless we know who we are exacting accountability from, and we cannot have that ability because of the anonymity.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, if you have a clear legal process, basically, we also have a process if the courts are requesting for user information, and we have clear process when we receive legal requests for user data, and we respond in accordance to the law and our terms of service as well. So every request that we review is carefully reviewed for your legal validity. We may reject or we may require greater information, and that is fine. But there are times when we disclose, and there are times when
Precisely, Mr. Tan, your ability to reject that request for information defeats our rights to enforce accountability. That kind of power is not found in the traditional media.
So basically, it's a lot of you have to understand that data at Facebook, we have legal obligations as a platform headquartered in the United States as well. So it's not just legal obligations for the Philippines. We have legal obligations where we're headquartered as well. So
Mr. Tan, your legal obligations are defined by law. That's why it's called legal obligations.
Exactly. That's my point. So we have legal obligations in other jurisdictions as well for data. And exactly to that point, we do, and not saying we don't. So, I mean, Rob can tell you we have released data on many occasions, and I'm not saying we don't, but I'm just letting you know the process that we have. And we have a very clear defamation form. We have a clear data request process, and we do give them data.
Mr. Tan, would you oppose a law which would impose a process, which would define the process of your being required to reveal the author of a defamatory language?
So I think it's not for me to say yes or no. I think
that is why you're a resource
this is
person.
where there needs to be more consultation with my legal team. It's not for me to say whether I agree or not. But I think by us being here today in today's hearing is that we want to be able to work with you and listen to your concerns. So if there is a next steps, we want to be able to consult and give you what our obligations are and be partners in this.
Yes.
So I can't give
With
a
the
yes or
permission
no.
of the minority leader, perhaps we can request Mr. Tan to consult their legal team in Meta and provide us some inputs and comments as to the suggestion or proposal of the minority
We'll take
leader,
that down.
so that we can move forward. We will take into consideration the inputs of Meta with respect to precisely being able to identify anonymous accounts to be able to ensure accountability in terms of the material that is printed. We would appreciate a position paper or at least the comments in the of Meta. Is that okay, Senator Frank?
Yes, I think that will be suitable. We will be able to put up some clarity on our legal process and work with you and your team after the hearing.
Senator Frank, you still have the floor if you wish, or you want to hear from Mr. Abrams?
Yes, we will await this comment. And basically, I just want to reiterate and make it very brief. Number one, we are not suppressing free speech, but we are trying to find a balance between free speech and accountability, which is our system today, insofar as traditional media is concerned. The way the situation today is that the media platforms would have the authority to decide whether or not we can enforce accountability, and that power is simply exercised by denying or maintaining the power to let these accounts remain anonymous. All that we're saying is allow the free flow of information, allow information in this area, and we transfer the accountability. We move the responsibility of enforcing our rights from these social media platforms to our courts, which is really the arbiter of conflicts between citizens. That's all we're saying, Mr. Chairman. And we do hope that we can receive the comments of Meta insofar as this is concerned. With that, we have no more comment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Mr.
thank you, Minority Leader. Just a rejoinder. You know, free speech is not absolute, and I think the point being raised by Senator Drilon is that, and you know, in fact it's a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that you can't scream fire inside a jam-packed movie house. That's not free speech, and we would like to know how we can hold whoever screams fire inside a jam-packed movie house. How can we hold him accountable if he is anonymous?
So that's, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes. Just let me complete
sure, of course, sure.
and therefore, we need the identities to be made available should there be precisely such kind of speech that is harmful or defamatory or illegal or criminal in nature. And that's pretty much where we're at. I believe in the United States, the Capitol riot and what happened there in the January 6, 2020. Facebook, social media platforms, the identities of those who posted, defamatory and seditious statements were made to account for them, and their identities were made known. So that's precisely where we're at. That's what we are concerned about. And go ahead, Mr. Abrams. You have the
No,
floor.
thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate the Oliver Wendell Holmes quote there. It's an important one. I would say in that specific example, that's very clearly a criminal matter. That caused civil, a fire in a crowded theater would cause civil unrest, could cause violence. Ditto for obviously January 6th in the United States. There is a huge difference, as you know, sir, between libel and sedition and trying to overthrow the government. So God forbid there's a similar situation ever in the Philippines. That would clearly be one. That would be a police matter to which we would respond most likely in an emergency matter and not even through the regular warrant process. Just to go back for a second, Mr. Chair, when you asked, is the takedown channel working? Realizing, of course, that I'm on the record, I'd like to say I don't have statistics in front of me, so this is pretty anecdotal. But when I was in negotiations with General Rodriguez at the Anti-Cybercrime Group, I told him to please have his office contact me anytime he doesn't get a satisfactory resolution or there's a pushback with which he doesn't agree. We started this process about 3 or 4 months ago, and I've only heard from his staff 2 or 3 times, and we were able to work it out. So again, this is purely anecdotal, but the takedown channel from that we've devised for the Anti-Cybercrime Group of PNP does seem to be effective at this point. But I just think it's important that we avoid comparing libel to sedition. And I know that's not what you're doing, Mr. Chair, but please do rest assured that, should there be a speech issue where there's a call for violence, a threat to a senator, his or her family, anything that violates our community standards will be actioned. And it's really in every market. I don't know if this is encouraging or discouraging, but we have these discussions really in every government. You know, the difference between libel and fair political speech, and when does it cross into bullying, and when does it cross into a credible threat. And this is why I'm employed, so I can be here to work with the police 24/7. And this is why we have a public policy team with which you'll have access, who can and walk you through sort of non-law enforcement related matters. But please do rest assured that when we are invited to these matters, despite what our colleagues in other social media companies do or not do, we are committed to these ongoing dialogues. We are committed to the safety of our Filipino community of users, and we are committed to working with your government.
Yes, thank you for the points expressed, Mr. Abrams. Just for the information of our colleagues and Mr. Abrams, my daughter was on social media, has been subjected to death threats and rape threats. So would that be covered by your takedown?
That would be covered beyond takedown, sir. We would disclose information to the police on that. That's a violation of law, not just community standards. And if that is something that has happened on our platforms, I'm more than happy to talk to you offline, and we can get that squared away. I'm very sorry she went through that.
I'm sure a lot of others have gone through that who are not in high office,
Yes.
and that's our concern. I can take care of myself, but how about the ordinary folk? Yung mga maliliit nga, no? They have no recourse, and that's maybe that's another area that the Meta can look into. How do you expand that takedown policy and make it more accessible to others? And is there a hotline, for example, for such? You got billions of subscribers, so I don't know
Sure.
how you'd be able to ensure a swift response to to situations such as the one that I have described.
Sure. And I do have a partial response for you. So the Women and Child Cyber Protection Unit of PNP.
Yes.
And sorry, Senator, please.
Yes, go ahead, Senator Drilon, before we give the floor to...
Just a comment on Mr. Abrams. Yes, you have certain standards under which you would take down certain accounts. My problem there is that if you, in your judgment, they do not violate any of your rules, they will continue to use your platform to defame people, and we have no recourse. All that I'm saying is we should have a process by which these authors can be revealed and made public so that we can avail of our remedies under the law. In effect, Mr. Chairman, that judgment, instead of being given and that authority being given to our courts of law under our system, that power is located and is maintained and is held by the social media platforms for the simple device of not taking down or not revealing the source of this defamatory language. I'm sure that this is not the first time they hear this kind of a complaint, but why is it being resisted? There must be some other reason why this is being resisted. This is where I am coming from, and that is, if we can have an ability or exercise our authority to provide a better remedy to our citizens and to exact in a better manner the accountability of those who commit offenses. Your daughter, they're victims of this, and you're a senator, Mr. Chairman, as you said correctly. What about the ordinary citizens? There must be some reason why there is this refusal, just the process. We are not saying that they even take down. I'm not even looking at that. All that I'm saying is provide us a process to exact accountability. I am not saying that you should stop this, Mr. Chairman. I'm not saying that the platform owners stop this. All that we're saying is provide us with the information necessary so that we can exact accountability. We do not want that accountability to be dependent solely on the judgment of outfits like Facebook. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Minority Leader. Just an observation. There were some inputs that were shared to me by some of those who are familiar with social media platforms. Part of the reason why anonymity is, well, not encouraged, but is allowed to flourish is because that has a direct bearing between anonymity and greater engagement, which greater engagement therefore means more subscribers, more activity means perhaps more ads, advertising, etc. So that might be one
Yes.
reason as to the resistance. I don't have the data, but that was shared with me. Just to respond to the point raised earlier by the minority leader as to why there may be some resistance. Perhaps yes, Mr. Abrams, go ahead. Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to talk just briefly about the recourse for ordinary citizens. And obviously, I don't speak for the Philippines National Police. But as you're probably aware, the Women and Child Cyber Protection Unit and the ACG, the Anti-Cybercrime Unit, have what's called a retail policing model. So ordinary citizens can walk in and make complaints in person. Each and every day, if it's related to child safety or human trafficking, they report these directly to me, and they are actioned usually within a matter just of hours. So there is recourse for ordinary citizens, as frustrating though it might seem. Of course, Philippines is a very, very populated country. The police are as resource constrained as any agency is in a big country. But there is absolutely recourse. I do want to, however, just really sort of draw the line between what your daughter has experienced, sir, Mr. Chairman, and sort of the rest of our discussion. Your daughter, based on what you've told me, was clearly the victim of a criminal act, and we would absolutely be responsive to legal process for something like that. Similar thing happened to an FBI agent based in Bangkok the other day. We got him information within hours. So please don't feel helpless when there's a threat against a family member, a threat against you, because you're moving from defamation into something far more sinister, far more criminal. And it's something that we have a very well-defined process with which we can respond. So I just want to make sure that you're aware that on that end of things, we are absolutely in agreement, and we do have processes to deal with these types of matters. And again, if this happened on our platforms, I really do feel for you, and I would like to maybe speak offline as to how we can get that taken care of.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate that, but we would like to speak on behalf of the ordinary folks, and hopefully that too can be a mechanism that would ensure swift responses on the part of Meta when it involves precisely criminal activity. But thank you, we appreciate that. Are there other points on this issue? Because I'd like to proceed to another subject. Maybe, with the permission of the minority leader, we can proceed with another item. We can probably go back later on, depending on how the discussions go. The question is for the four A's. Miss Norbert, did I get the name right?
Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
I have to attend another committee hearing. I would
Yes.
like your permission
Yes,
to
thank
be
you,
able-
thank you. We will conduct there is a second hearing wherein Google will be attending if you wish to
Yeah, good.
be
Yes.
on December 15.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Minority Leader. We will now proceed with some questions directed at Ms. Norbert. Is she still on? Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Po.
The question, we were going through your code of ethics. You do have a code of ethics, no?
Yes po.
And this covers all advertising agencies who are members of 4As. Is that right?
That's correct.
And would you say your membership is,
Our membership po comprises of network agencies and independent agencies. So we have around 54 members po.
and how many individuals would those 54 members encompass? Would that be an industry of how many?
I'm not certain po, but mas madami po kaming independent.
So would you be more than 1,000 who are a part of the 4As?
The member companies would be around 54 po. So I'm guessing times 200 or average po in one company would be 50
So that
per
would be
per
54 times
agency.
50, around 2,000,
Yes,
individuals. Yes.
sir.
I asked that because the code of ethics covers advertising, the industry, meaning truth in advertising, because you do have a lot of moral, how do you call it,
Obligations we are
provisions on. Yeah. Let me see that. Sorry, I'm trying to find the. Where is it? Yung, I have I have a 40 page. 4, yeah, okay. I have a 40-page briefer here, so uh, page 4 is no, this is not the. Yeah. Anyway, uh, but here you go. Truthful presentation, Article 2, responsibilities to the public. Social responsibilities of advertising agencies are primarily exercised through advertisements produced for public consumption. So that's advertisements, no? For public. Truthfulness and honesty, decency, legality, fair competition is generally accepted in business.
Yes, sir.
Truthful presentation, honesty, decency, but this doesn't cover. Uh, does this cover political advertising, for example?
We for our members po, majority of the network agencies um do not handle public or politicians because it's not allowed po in our as a global rule po for us. So though we know there's a lot of money involved in taking on advertising of politicians, however, majority of our companies, since we're a network, we're not allowed to handle them.
But you do have companies that handle them, no? I mean,
Um,
member companies.
that pa I'm not certain, but I can get back to you on that one po.
Yes. The reason why I raised this is that, um, you know, the report, the research paper of Dr. Uh, Dr. Ong, Dr. Cabañez, precisely identified advertising agency executives who are directly involved in the disinformation and as a sideline. In other words, uh, by day they are covered by the code of ethics of of the 4As, but by night they're not. In other
Uh,
words, it's a yeah, it's a sideline. that they'd like to undertake. My question precisely is, should there not be a code of ethics for political advertising?
I believe there should be, but if that's going to be for the issue, but that's what they're doing on their personal time, but we cannot talk over as for A's. However,
Yes, yes.
Mr. Chair, is it possible to ask for a copy of Mr. Jason's paper?
Paper? Yes, yes, sige. We will send it to you via email.
Yes, please.
Actually,
We would
actually
appreciate
the
that.
wonders of technology and thanks to WhatsApp. Is WhatsApp also a meta company? It is, no? Yeah, because
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it is, yes.
I was able to send how many pages? 45, 50 pages? Yeah, 50 pages of that report, of that research paper via WhatsApp. So that's a upside of social media and these phone apps. We'll send it to you. No?
Yes,
Um,
thank
but
you.
precisely, we raised this question because the research paper of Dr. Ong and Dr. Cabañas provides that the chief architects of disinformation are actually uh, uh, ad agency executives and creatives. So we'd like to know what the position of course, 4As, you may say, no, they are not covered, they're outside of our jurisdiction, etc. But I'd like to think agency executives, whether they're doing it for advertising of brands or advertising of public officials, it's like one coin and two sides. No, I don't know how you can say we're just on one side of the coin, not the other side. When you meet with them, you discuss with them, you compete with them in the industry for brands, and you meet them and you have dinner with them for. Well, some of you don't. Number of you do involve yourselves in political advertising. I'd like to think there might be some concern there. No? How do you draw the line between being moral, being honest, being decent as 4As, and yet members or at least advertising agency executives are in fact involved in immoral, or I wouldn't say, well, deception, dishonesty, which is the opposite. No? I'd like to think the code of conduct is a product precisely of many years of the industry being able to self-regulate, manage, and ensure, the quality, professionalism in your field.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
diba? So I'd
If
like to think, since digital media is a new horizon or a new terrain, a new landscape, wala pa yung code of ethics. But I take it from you, ma'am, that perhaps there should be a separate code of ethics for political advertising. No?
we're actually going to be reiterating na lang po the general principle of what we have for our code of ethics, which it's a social responsibility po to be truthful and relevant and foster sound values and promote the welfare of the public. So the practice of advertising should foster love of country and things Filipino and should be constant with the aspiration of the people and observant of the laws of the land. As Association for a take these things seriously and would appreciate collaborating po with the Senate on the such reports that were mentioned earlier, whether digital or our traditional po.
Yes, yes, thank you. Yes, it's just that precisely when you look at the creative, the research, excellent actually, Dr. Ong and Dr. Cabañas. Where is that? If I may note, no? Man, the position, no? The disinformation structure, chief disinformation architects, manages the entire campaign project and budget, authors communication plan, hires influencers and fake account operators, operates several fake accounts themselves, reports directly to the politician. And these are ad agency and PR executives. That's the profile. So that's one. And then it goes down, whether it's ad agency, creatives, but it's really,
It's
sabi nga nila, you can't keep any secrets in Manila or in the Philippines. No, it will eventually come out. So it's really just one community of advertising executives who, during their downtime, I don't know, or free time, go into these how do you call it, campaigns. So the reason why we called 4As is precisely we want to know, um, is it a concern for 4As, or are, you know, I wouldn't.
definitely it is a concern for us, sir. But we'd love to be able to have some time to review po the position paper of Professor Jason, and
Yes.
then convene po as a board so that we can also provide po Mr. Chair with our position paper.
Yes, we would appreciate that because
Yes.
tulad nung Makati Business Club, yung Management Association of the Philippines, who have taken a position on the issue, I'd like to see if the 4As could do the same. It will really, you know, send a strong signal. No? I've spoken to a few ad agency executives confidentially, and they too have expressed concern how the industry is being, you know, how do you call it? Uh, how the industry is able to, or is slowly, how do you call it? The integrity issues are affecting the industry. Uh, so, yun. Uh, is there for 4As, for example, because you said earlier a number of you are not allowed because of international, how do you call it, restrictions? Is that the right term?
It's
Uh,
the bylaws po of our corporations that we're not allowed to handle
yes,
like
yes.
public figures.
But there are actually in 4As who are allowed. I mean, not all are not allowed. Meaning merong mga, not as an
Unfortunately,
ad agency maybe, but as a individual, how does that work?
unfortunately po, I'm not in privy with other companies, but for DDB Group Philippines, where I am part of, we're really not allowed.
Yes. But you did mention earlier that there are others in the 4As who are involved in political advertising.
I think these are just individuals. They're not actually members of
Yes.
4As. Uh,
Oh, they're not members of 4As, or they're part of a company that is a member of 4As, but they do this individually on their individual capacity. Is that how it works?
Mr. Chair, I can confirm po that part.
Okay, okay. But anyway, so you wouldn't know the answer to the question that if there are disclosure requirements for ad agency executives who are to engage the service, to be engaged, their services are engaged by a politician, for example.
On our po company po, we cannot handle. So
Yes.
there's
Um,
no
uh,
disclosure needed.
yes, I was hoping as representative of the 4As, you would know, you know, the industry practice among different ad agencies. In your case, in your ad agency, that's not allowed. No, no.
It's not allowed, and we handle po brands in particular.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Yes, which are
So
consumer brands.
so maybe we can invite your president. No, he might be able to help us in the next hearing. No.
Yes, but
Yes. So we will do that. No. With the Makati, the question now is with the Makati Business Club and or the Management Association of the Philippines. May we know, for example, in some of your member companies, is there a familiarity with the process of placing digital ads that eventually end up in YouTube sites or social media sites that precisely spread disinformation or scurrilous remarks? Ika nga. We identified earlier, no, a few, for example, and they're not here, unfortunately. Rockwell was here and then left. We will invite them again because we'd like to know. Sana sila ang sasagot nito, but hopefully maybe the Makati Business Club or the MBC, MAP can help us.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead, Coco.
I suspect at the highest level, the CEO level, they probably don't have a good knowledge of that process. Their media departments would, working with advertising agencies such as those represented by platforms, working with advertising agencies and platforms as well. But the top executives probably not. In an earlier version of our statement, there was a more specific call to the media departments to put more attention on this, and but that remains the message that the company should pay more attention to this. There's also in the second to the last paragraph a note there about some ongoing efforts to build tools that can help advertising companies and advertisers make these judgments. Those are upcoming by next year, so that would be helpful to the advertisers and the ad agencies, Mr. Senator.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Moreno.
I agree. Yes, please call me Roy. Anyway, Mr. Chairman, I agree with the comments of Coco. That really the companies do not know, especially CEOs, do not know of such efforts. As you have mentioned, if these are being done by such individuals, it is on an individual basis, as you said, probably at night, and over which many of the companies do not have any control. So I guess that's a reality that we have to see how it can be addressed. And maybe along the lines of what Coco has mentioned, maybe some of these accreditation or some of these standards will have to be enforced.
Yes.
Well, go ahead, please. Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
We raised this question because, for example, well, on the side of maybe one company, the digital media buy, one company, for one campaign, for example, the information that we got would be around 200 million pesos. No? So that's digital. So I'd like to think that that's just one company. Maybe we need to get the assistance, perhaps, of the Department of Trade and seek clarification as to how much is the digital industry, advertising industry today. Would any of the business organizations know this? Kasi isang kumpanya lang, 200 million. So I can imagine, and that's, I think, just one campaign. So I'd like to think we're talking of billions of pesos, no? Go ahead, Coco, just to give us a sense.
Mr. Chairman, we don't have that information. I don't think the ad companies do, but I believe Meta has been releasing spending by candidates or by political figures, and they've promised to do that. I think that's one of the good steps that they've taken that will serve us well in this election and future elections.
Perhaps Meta can help us here, but before we ask them to respond, The point being that a lot of money is being funneled into digital advertising, and including precisely the ads that go into these, disinformation sites. As I said, earlier, for Shopee, for example, we asked them to clarify the question of whether they know that their ads are appearing in such sites that say, confirm, Atienza, Soto, Santos, makukulong dahil lumabag sa batas na ipilit ang prangkisa ng ABS. So that's one site. And Shopee has an ad there. So, nakakagulat. Attorney galit kay matapos kay Tito Soto matapos, and then Kiko tinawag na bobo. So Shopee comes out in these sites. And I said earlier, Lazada, again, hitting the senators, pinaulanan ng mura, di ba? So Lazada comes out as an ad. And then Asia Brewery, bobo, mga tinawag na bobo si Kiko, etc. No? An ad appears from Asia Brewery, and then and other companies. So they're spending a lot of money, and it's funding these sites, or at least the ads that appear in these sites. They're able to monetize it. So kumikita itong mga sites na ito, no? And that's why we welcome the statement of the MBC, the MAP, and how many other organizations? Coco, 17 other?
Total of 18, including
Yeah.
MBC and MAP
So
representatives.
that hopefully the CEO and the CFO of these companies will take a closer look at where the digital advertising money is going. What are they monetizing? And who are they enabling?
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes,
may.
go ahead.
Yeah, in the past, when I was with Procter and Gamble, and that was in traditional media, the media buyer of the company would know where the ads were placed, how many hours, how many minutes, etc. I presume that that is a similar process for the ads. So perhaps one can invite companies like Lazada, etc., and ask them how exactly do they have their placements.
Yes.
Because that is a media strategy of each company.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Coco.
One of the things that we told the other signatories, and actually other associations that were not ready to sign at this point, is that we would have a continuing engagement on this, including
Coco's signal is
It's weak signal.
a continuing engagement.
Obviously, it's not on WhatsApp.
Yes. Ms. Tordesillas, you're raising your hand. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I just want to direct my questions to other resource speakers who are into advertising through you. I'd like to ask, do advertising agencies automatically handle the public relations aspect of their client, the needs of their clients? Because when it comes to direct advertising, I see parang hindi problema kasi like in Facebook, you see advertisements. Alam mong advertisement yun eh. But what we are talking now are PR agencies who are hiring influencers,
That is
which are yun ang ngayon ang umaano sa digital media eh, di ba? Parang influencers who are endorsing candidates or even attacking the opponents of their clients through their posts. So these are not these are not direct advertising, but these are paid. I understand some influencers are being paid by the millions. So I don't know if you are an advertising agency, do you automatically handle the PR needs of your clients?
Mr.
And
Chair?
and how do ngayon papaano mo ngayon ma-regulate yung uh, yung sa influencers? And I think in the study by Dr. Jonathan Ong and
Dr.
Jason
Cabañas,
Cabañas,
yes.
they talk about influencers and trolls. Those are handled by the PR agencies. So I don't
Yes,
know if
yes,
it's the same
yes.
as advertising
I
agencies.
understand the point, Ellen, and let me get the response. No, but just to clarify that, these are two aspects. No, the uh, the business advertising budget goes to some sites that spread fake news. Okay, particularly in YouTube. So that's one, and it's monetized. The reason why my understanding is they get these ads up there is because maraming ang nanonood. Marami the algorithm says this is class D, A, B, mostly male, watch this, etc. And it's fake, but regardless. So the ads will come out there. And so these sites earn, the YouTube sites have, earned from those placements. So that's one aspect. Would you like those spreading disinformation to earn from your digital advertising budget? So that's one, which is why we want to ask the companies what is their policy regarding disinformation and ads of their companies being associated with or appearing in sites that that attack the person. The other one, and this I think see Mr. Dr. Cabañas can help us, is what they have identified as the infrastructure wherein politicians with their money spend or pay influencers, and through the PR agencies, the advertising executives. So maybe Mr. Cabañas can reply to Ms. Tordesilla's question regarding the funding of these influencers who have a lot of followers. Go ahead, Mr. Dr. Cabañas.
Thank you, Senator Pangilinan. Just also, I guess, to preface what I'm going to say, just a bit of a clarification as well about at least in our research, the so-called, those whom we call the chief architects that we talked to, the ones that we were able to talk to during the course of that project, they no longer work for the big multinational ad agencies because, of course, there are ethics in these organizations as well. But they brought the expertise to the realm of politics. And then there are also some who have opened up local boutique ad and PR agencies, and they're the ones who are like kind of like there's a front shop of above the line ad and PR, and then the back end, which is the political campaign. So just to clarify,
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah. So
yeah,
these are individuals who
yes,
came from the advertising industry and have now transitioned into political advertising.
yes,
But these are
exactly.
also boutique agencies, meaning
So
small,
local.
local. Uh, well, we don't know if they're actually simply dummies of a larger network. I don't know because there's a lot of money there for sure. No, so
That
may pwede rin ganun, na it's a network of boutique ad agencies, no?
mm,
Not the formal ones, not the official ones, not with a great brand or a long-standing brand. No? Pero I don't know, but probably could be created by those in these, in the mainstream industry, but for purposes precisely of maybe skirting, going around certain, industry requirements. Okay, so having clarified that, you may answer now the question of Ms. Tordesillas.
Yeah. So what I was saying earlier about the need to really define what campaigns mean, and I think that speaks directly to what Mr. Distillas raised. Actually, Mr. Distillas earlier talked about the difference between disinformation and misinformation, and I think this is really what's challenging at the moment. Is that a lot of the campaigns that we see online, they look like misinformation. It feels like it's just ordinary people who don't really know that they're sharing false information. But it's actually coordinated. It is disinformation. It is an intentional, deliberate attempt. Of course, it's true that there are people who who are just doing misinformation. They're not malicious in the sharing, but in the way that this information is done, it's often the case that it's made to look very organic, and in fact, I think the threshold, for example, for social media companies like Facebook is a high threshold for coordinated, inauthentic behavior. But what we've seen with the digital disinformation producers is that they've kind of skirted that because they know how to make their campaigns look like it's not coordinated. They spread it across many different disinformation producers, and sometimes these people don't even know that they're working together on the same campaign. And so they're doing it their own ways, but they're actually part of a broader campaign that they're not actually very conscious about. Or maybe they have an idea, but they don't know whom they're working with. And so that's a key thing that we need to, I think, legislation needs to address. Like, how do we define the idea of a campaign? If you're just thinking of like the old version TV ad, but just shown on social media, that would be easier because you can just say, paid for by whoever. But the ones that take on very different formats, like influencers posting or just hashtags that are made to trend, they don't really fit the old definition of a campaign, these new versions of digital media campaigns. So I think in legislation, it needs to have a broader definition of this campaign to capture these techniques that the disinformation producers use to elide accountability. Thank you.
And on the point raised by Ms. Tordesillas that PR practitioners or agency executives, ad agency executives, uh, uh, paying these influencers. Maybe you can respond to that
Yes.
based on your research.
Yeah. It seems like that it's the chief architects. What they do is they're the ones who interface with the politicians. But and then eventually they hire, like I said earlier, like teams of disparate groups of people who work together, but they don't necessarily know each other in these particular campaigns, and that the money to pay them comes from the chief architect, from the from that ad and PR executive. So this person is the one who looks and hires these digital influencers. And fairly recently, we were doing research on a totally different topic on digital labor, and we encountered freelancers who said that they were approached actually in the 2016 elections as well to participate in this. So this goes really, really broad. So it's a mix of influencers, freelancers, different groups of people being hired to kind of translate the strategy of the ad and PR strategists.
Okay, thank you. There was a point earlier raised by the MAP through Mr. Moreno, si Roy, and this is directed actually to the social media platforms. Or was it Coco who said that they do have information that they share regarding media buy, media spending? Is that right? Could you share that with us? Or, do you confirm that, Mr. Tan?
Well, that didn't come from me. Didn't
I
come from
think it came from Coco.
Yeah,
maybe.
I said.
Did you get that, Roy?
Yes.
And would you care to respond?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So this is exactly what I spoke about earlier, is the Facebook ads library. So this is something that we launched in August 2020. And like I mentioned, people need to be authorized to place ads and to run political and electoral ads. And then they need to run it with a paid for by disclaimer. So who is paying for it? And all this goes into the ad library for 7 years, an ad archive for 7 years. And you're able to see the details of exactly who's paying for the ad. You're able to see the details of the demographics of who is the ad's targeting or who has viewed the ad, as well as the rough spend level of the ad. And in the ads library as well, you're able to see the general spend of particular pages. So a particular campaign page, you're able to see over a period of time how much money they've actually spent on our platform on advertising. And this is something we have actually briefed Comelec, various NGO CSOs, and PCIJ in the Philippines on actually quite recently in anticipation for the elections, because we want to make sure that this transparent tool is known widely and used widely by members of civil society and media out there. Yep, thank you.
Oh, there you go. And who can access this, Mr. Tan?
So the Facebook
Library.
ad library is public for all to see and all to view. And if you have access to the chat, I can just, on this WebEx, I have just put in a link that you can click on, and then you can see the ad library. And this is public for everyone. And I think one thing to note as well is that even though we archive all these political ads for the past 7 years, any live ad, any ad that's running, that even companies, consumer companies that may not need to put a disclaimer, their ads will still be covered under the this ad library. You can actually view the live ads. They will not go to the archive though if they are not political and electoral ads.
Yes. So these are political and electoral ads.
Yeah.
Is there a way to aggregate the ads in terms of who, the ad spending, who is spending what?
Yes,
Is
yes.
that
So we
okay?
list it by each individual page, and you can also search for the page itself, and you can see what ads they've placed in the past, 7 years, political ads they've placed, and how much they're spending. So all that is transparent for all to see. And also in 2000 or in early next year, basically, we are hoping and intending to add social issues to the advertising. So what this means is that in some countries around the globe, on top of political and electoral ads, we also require the disclaimer for social issues, for particular social issues. So, for example, in the U.S., some social issues like economy and immigration are covered under this particular column. In other countries, it may be other topics. So we work with civil society and other folks on the ground to kind of deduce what these social issues should be, and how they're concerned with each individual country. So we hope to launch this early next year, and hopefully everything will roll out before the elections.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tan. We now there's Miss Tordusi. Ellen,
Ah,
you
yes.
you have a you're
Yeah.
you're asking for
I'd
the
like,
floor. Go ahead.
yeah, I'd like to add, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add to what you mentioned about some companies advertising in pages where they were that parlay this information, like you mentioned about Lazada and all that. Yeah, that's where I think fact checking comes in, because these are really, you're right. These are really, there are really popular pages that are really engaged in this information. So when we fact check a post that is like false, we submit because Facebook has a rating, false, misleading, fake, and all that. So if we submit a rating to Facebook, it is Facebook that acts on our on the rating that we submit. Like as fact checker, we don't delete, we don't block. So if we rate a post as false, it's Facebook who usually Facebook uh, lowers the post in the news feed, and I think the visibility is reduced by a large percent, like something like 60%. So uh, the what you call that, the advertising capability of that post is much reduced. That's why they get that. I think that's how fact checking helps in reducing the spread of disinformation in the platform. Uh, that's why influencers whose post we have tagged, I mean, they're angry at us. They think that we're the ones who caused their reduction of their income. So that's
Yes,
how.
yes. That
That's
would be interesting in terms of,
mm,
the severity of the penalty, no?
mm.
Um, so when you report it, they
They reduce the visibility.
yes. Of course,
They, they,
that's one penalty. That it doesn't stop them from, say, suspending the account.
Not yet.
No.
And I think I don't know, it was Rob or Roy, you said that those who continue to
Yes.
engage in this information, they do something about it later.
Yes, because you can suspend or you can completely deactivate, depending on the preference of Facebook. If they want to go hard on this information, as hard as they want to, or as you said, in instances they just lower the
The,
access,
the,
the
yeah, they
exposure.
lower the post in the news feed.
Yes, so there are
I,
several options. If you want to be hardline, then you can suspend or maybe worse, deactivate the account, or suspend indefinitely, or
take down.
suspend for 1 month. There are various penalties that can be imposed for such disinformation, and well, yeah, you don't want to use the term false news. So disinformation activity, maybe also for inauthentic behavior, you can suspend, you can lower, or you can totally deactivate. Yes, Mr. Roy Tan, go ahead. You're raising your hand. You wish
Yeah, so
to.
maybe I can expound on what Ellen has mentioned. So yes, so when there are multiple, or when a post has been fact checked as false, that particular post cannot be used as in an ad. So someone cannot promote that post or boost that post on our platform because they've been rated as false. So that's an additional layer that we prevent a false post from going further and having better reach. In addition, yes, we do downrank or lower that appearance of that post on the newsfeed. We demote it, and so a person would highly unlikely they'll see it. And what happens is that we have an overlay as well on the post. So before you can actually view the post, there's like an overlay where it tells you this post has been rated as false. Would you like to find out more information? So it's very clear. And if you haven't seen that on the newsfeed, then that's good because that means it's been demoted and you don't see it. But yes, so we do give additional overlay. And if that particular account has or page has been posting a lot of misinformation and false news, we do lower the reach and organic engagement of that page as well. And so over time, they will have more strikes and at the account level as well in terms of what you can do and how they can action things on Facebook. So they do get strikes, like I mentioned earlier on in the conversation.
When does it come to the point that you actually deactivate the account or suspend it, or take it down permanently? Or
So it
when does that happen?
depends. So, Mr. Chair, it depends on the violations and the severity of it. So there are some accounts, for example, if they have violated our child pornography or terrorism violations, that's an instant takedown. There are some other violations, for example, maybe like bullying and harassment, which there's a certain threshold. After if you do it multiple times, then you get enough strikes to get taken down. So it really depends on the severity of the strike. But we do monitor that on the back end.
Yes, and it will be in a previous hearing where Facebook was Meta was present on online abuse and exploitation of children. There was a Meta employee or official who said that billions of accounts have been taken down, no? Precisely to address the challenges of disinformation, criminal activity online, etc. Um, I raised the question because yes, you've taken down. In fact, for the May 2019 elections, I think you took down 300 plus accounts. Uh, um, but the question is, how soon do they sprout up again and come up with new fake accounts or new accounts that of fake individuals, no, inauthentic accounts. That's the challenge because you could have taken down 1 billion, but if they're really organized and they fund it, then they can come up with not just fake accounts, but actually buy. Right now, I understand they're buying accounts,
Yep.
existing accounts with a number of subscribers. They contact the administrator and they buy it, and then eventually, lo and behold, it's now an account of the buyer. And
Yep.
how does that work?
So, Mr. Chair, so we are aware of some of these issues. So I think talking about maybe like your previous incident about when we took down a few hundred accounts, do we come back and take down the accounts that come up after that? Yes, we do continue to monitor. So it's not like we take down a whole suite of accounts and that's it, we walk away. So we continue to monitor. There are some ability for us to determine if it's the same people coming back online. So we do continue to monitor and take down if they do. We also, in terms of the buying and selling, we also don't allow people to buy and sell such groups and to give fake engagement to pages. So on some of these examples you have actually mentioned, and we know that they have been on the press as well, we have actually taken some of these down already, and we continue to look into it and continue to investigate. So this is one of the top of the mind things that we have for the upcoming elections, and we are investigating and we continue to act on it. So we have acted and we continue to act on some of these issues. But on terms of our our advertising and misinformation policies, we're also happy to arrange with you and your team separate briefing sessions to give you a bit more detail, because I'm not the expert on it. I have colleagues who are better placed and to explain the nuances. So if you would be open to that, we'll be happy to arrange with your team after this hearing as well.
We can get a technical working group convened.
Yes.
So for that briefing, Mr. Tan. Thank you for offering that. We appreciate it. Well, and going back to the point earlier raised by Coco Alquas and Mr. Moreno Rui on the matter of media agencies being able to identify placements. That's why we should be able to call them. That's precisely why we invited the Media Specialists Association of the Philippines, so that they could explain to us how because what we're informed, or the information that's relayed to us, is that the matter of placing ads isn't so much as to why whether it's spreading fake news or not, but it's an algorithm thing, and therefore it's the algorithm or the machine that decides where the ads ought to go. But I think if that's the explanation, then maybe we should have a better explanation, or be more proactive and say, wait, yes, the algorithm says that, but who wants to fund disinformation, and lies and deceiving, how do you call it, video and material.
So I'll be happy, Mr. Chair, to just explain a bit more on how ads work on the top line level.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, and we're happy to also arrange also a session for more detail on ads if you like. But in general, our how advertising on Facebook and Instagram, basically our platforms work is it's really a self-serve model. So while you can work with ad agencies, or you can work with media agencies to place ads on our platforms, essentially any individual, you yourself can do that yourself. And so as long as you have a credit card, you can actually place ads yourself, and that's why our ads transparency tools makes it, gives it a gives more friction and more transparency to who are placing these ads because we know it's so easy. Um, as part of advertising, and when you think about the algorithms, when you think about targeting, so you have basic top line targeting aspects of advertising. You can target by demographics, you can target by region, you can target by interest. And in terms of the deeper level interest targeting, we have actually announced that from early next year in January, we are removing some of the additional micro or targeting options available to people on our platform. So some of these examples are things like how whether you have certain political leanings, election leanings as well. So we are removing some of these options, as well as options like whether you determine yourself as LGBT or trans or some of these different interests that you may put yourself under. So we are removing some of these micro targeting to kind of ensure that there's a level playing field and that people have better kind of understanding or better experience with our advertisements. So that's some of the work that we have done and that we are doing as well in the coming months, especially in January when this launches. Yep.
Thank you for the information that you just shared. We have other questions actually, but it's almost noon, and maybe we can end here for this morning's hearing and suspend the session until December 15, 9 a.m. The invitations will be sent to you, and we thank you for the time that you spent here. But we're just scratching a bit of the surface here. We'd like to look likewise into precisely the ad placements made by companies. We'd also like to look at well, Google isn't here, so we'd like to hear from Google as well, and YouTube. Of course, that's Google. And we also don't have the companies that are placing the ads, and we'd like to look at how these ad uh, how these sites earn from these ad placements. I think maybe Facebook can explain that at some, in the next hearing, and maybe Google too. For example, this site where I was pilloried, and so with my wife and my daughter too. How do they earn from that? What portion of the ads or are paid for by the ad agencies, their share, and then Facebook, etc. Because in the end, who wants to admit that they're actually profiting from disinformation, lies, and really libelous remarks, criminal libel remarks in the Philippine jurisdiction. I would think no one would admit that. But having said that, we'd like to thank all our resource persons for today's hearing. And to those who did not appear or sent their regrets and we will be inviting you again to the next hearing, and we hope that they will attend. We are serious about this information. It actually costs, suicide rates among children, exposed to social media has increased tremendously. I mean, we're serious about disinformation, bullying, and other criminal activity or defamatory activity on online. Experts have said that to a great extent it undermines democracy when disinformation is impacts on choices made by our citizens or voters. Very basic, and I think that's precisely why Maria Ressa won the Nobel Prize for her work on social media platforms, disinformation, and how to address the challenges of the digital technology and its impact on human rights, on democracy, and respect for civility also. So we'd like to thank everyone. It's almost lunchtime. We will suspend this hearing and we will resume on December 15, 9 a.m. And the committee secretary is instructed to ensure that the invitations for that hearing will be sent to our resource persons. There being no other matters to address for today's hearing, the chair hereby suspends the hearing of the Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes Committee. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, and have a pleasant afternoon. Maraming salamat.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.